Welcome to the Sir Cecil Jacobs Auditorium. To facilitate the comfort and safety of everyone present, we ask that you take a moment to observe these guidelines. Kindly turn off or mute all cell phones for the duration of this event. Please do not eat, drink, or chew gum in the auditorium. Smoking is not permitted in the auditorium. All areas of the ECCB campus are designated as a no-smoking zone. In the event of an emergency, the alarm will sound, or you will be instructed to vacate the auditorium. There are 4 emergency exits, 2 on your right and 2 on your left. If the need arises, please use the exit that is closest to you. Proceed to the exit in a calm and orderly fashion and watch your step. Once outside of the building, you will be directed to gather on the roadway adjacent to the auditorium and await further instructions from the ECCB protection officers. Thank you for your cooperation. We hope that your experience here will be a pleasant one.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please stand for the arrival of the Governor-General of St. Christopher and Nevis, Her Excellency Dame Marcella Liebert. We would like to invite Mr. Cossa Henry to do a rendition of the national anthem of St. Christopher and Nevis. Mr. Cossa Henry.
O land of beauty, our country, where peace abounds, thy children stand free. On the strength of will and love, with God in all our struggles, Saint Kitts and Nevis be a nation bound together with a common destiny. As stalwarts we stand for justice and liberty, with wisdom and truth. We will serve and honor thee. No sword nor spear can conquer, for God will sure defend. His blessing shall forever to posterity extend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Henry. Wonderful job. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as we now invite Reverend Derek Brown, Superintendent Minister of the Methodist Church, St. Kitts Circuit, to do the invocation.
Let us pray. Gracious God and Heavenly Father, Creator of all that is, we praise you and adore you, for you gifted us this beautiful day, a day in which we experienced your blessings, along with the opportunity to be a blessing to others. We thank you for this opportunity to gather here this evening to host the 26th Sir Arthur Lewis Memorial Lecture. We thank you for those who have served, and especially for Sir Arthur Lewis and his contribution to our region's development and integration. We thank you for the organizers of this event and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank's sponsorship. We also thank you for the one who will deliver the lecture this evening. May he be inspired in his delivery, and may we be challenged, not only in our thinking, but challenged to positive and fruitful action that will make a difference. We invite your Holy Spirit to guide our proceedings. May all that is said and done bring honor and glory to you, for we pray in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Brown. You may be seated. Your Excellency, Dame Marcella Althea Liburd, GCMG, JP, Governor General of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, Prime Minister and ECCB Council Member, St. Christopher, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Mrs. Prince Drew, Dr. Ellis Lorenzo Webster, ECCB Council Member, the Honorable Premier and Minister for Finance for Anguilla, the Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Ian Handley, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education, Youth, Empowerment, Housing and Human Settlement, Ecclesiastical and Faith-Based Affairs, Social Development, Gender Affairs, Aging and Disabilities, and Mrs. Matthew Handley. The Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, Senior Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade, Industry, Commerce and Consumer Affairs, Economic Development and Investment. Other members of Cabinet, members of Parliament in the Government of St. Christopher, St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dennis Cornwall, Minister for Finance for Grenada, ECCB Council Member. Mr. Timothy N.J. Antoine, Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and Mrs. Antoine. Ms. D. Tracy Polius, Chief Director, Policy of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Mrs. Hilary Hazel, Financial Secretary, Ministry of Finance, and ECCB Board Member for St. Christopher, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Mr. Ellis Hazel. Mr. Whitfield Harris, Jr., ECCB Board Member for Antigua and Barbuda. Mrs. Kathleen Rogers, ECCB Board Member for Anguilla. Professor Carl Justin Robinson, the 26th Sir Arthur Lewis Memorial Lecturer. Permanent Secretaries and Senior Government Officials. Members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps. Mr. Sam Assad, representative of the International Banknote Society. Mrs. Veronica John Luke, Vice Dean, Division of Arts, Sciences, and General Studies, St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College, recipient institution of the 16th Sir Arthur Lewis Memorial Book Award. Management and staff of the ECCB and affiliate institutions, principals, teachers, and students, individuals joining us online and via radio and television stations across the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I know that was a mouthful. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Leon Bullen, and I hail from the Tri-Island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. It is my distinct pleasure to be your host for this evening's proceedings. This, the 26th edition of the Sir Arthur Lewis Memorial Lecture, under the theme, Resilience and Shared Prosperity, Implications and Imperatives for Small Island Developing States. Ladies and gentlemen, we have in store for you an engaging evening where your intellectual appetite will be piqued by our guest speaker. And of course, we'll also recognize and celebrate our banks that have made great strides over the past year. So we now invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy what we have in store for you. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, you will be treated to a musical performance by our ECCB Performing Arts and Band. Join me in welcoming on stage the ECCB Performing Arts and Band.
If you ask me where I wanna be, oh, I've been waiting for so long. Now my time has come. My friends and my family, with you I wanna be. Yeah, oh, what a joy to see our island of water of people together in unity. Raise the flags of love, leave it in the sky. Represent your country, hold your flags up high. Hand in hand together, we're a region strong. So in spite of struggles, we will carry on and on and on. Yes, we will carry on and on and on. Calling the people of the region, it's time to get ready. Here in the currency union, the people come from all around, maintaining global stability. This region is a place to be, to celebrate our victories. From the struggle to the hard times, no longer will the change be free. Raise the flag of high, leave it in the sky. Represent your country, hold your flags up high. Hand in hand together, we're a region strong. So in spite of struggles, we will carry on and on and on. Carry on and on and on. We're a region strong. Raise the flags up high, limit is the sky. Represent your country, hold your flags up high. Hand in hand together, we're a region strong. So in spite of struggles, we will carry on and on and on. We will carry on and on and on. Raise the flags up high, limit is the sky. Represent your country, hold your flags up high. Hand in hand together, we're a region strong. So in spite of struggles, we will carry on and on and on. We will carry on and on and on. We will carry on and on and on. We will carry on and on
it up one more time for the ECCB Performing Arts and Band. Who say we don't have talent at the ECCB and throughout the ECCU? We might be small, eh? We might be small, but we large. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, we are about to receive our guest speaker. And to do the honors, we'd like to invite Ms. Nelissa Marriott, the policy analyst in the Advisory Services Unit in the Governor's Office, to introduce our guest speaker. Please join me in welcoming on stage Ms. Nelissa Marriott.
Master of Ceremonies, thank you. Your Excellency, the Governor General, I wish to adopt the protocol so ably established. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our esteemed guest speaker this evening, Professor Carl Justin Robinson, who is the Pro-Vice Chancellor and Campus Principal at the University of the West Indies Five Islands campus based in Antigua and Barbuda. Professor Robinson is a National of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He is a proud University of the West Indies alumnus with a Bachelor of Science in Management Studies from the Cave Hill campus. He has a Master of Science in Finance and Econometrics from Florida International University, and he obtained his PhD in Finance from the University of Manchester in the United Kingdom. In his more than 20 years with the University of the West Indies, Professor Robinson has served as head of the Department of Management Studies at the Cave Hill campus, as Executive Director of Sagicor Cave Hill School of Business and Management, as Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, as Pro-Vice Chancellor of the Board for Undergraduate Studies. He was also a member of the working group that established the Five Islands campus in 2018. He's a professor of corporate finance, and his research interests are in capital markets in developing countries, public finance, financial risk management, and corporate finance, of course. He has published over 50 refereed publications in several regional and international journals. Before he was appointed principal at the University of the West Indies Five Islands campus, Professor Robinson was leading the implementation of the policy to support the multi-campus teaching and learning initiative, overseeing the conduct of a 2-year pilot from 2022 to 2024. This initiative facilitates the sharing of teaching resources across the 5 campuses of the University of the West Indies to expose students to the full range of the university's expertise and to allow for economies of scale in the deployment of teaching resources. In addition, he oversaw the implementation of the University of the West Indies foreign language policy, which requires students entering the university from the academic year 2022 to 2023 to demonstrate competence in a language other than English before graduating. Professor Robinson is actively engaged in public service and serves as a director of the Central Bank of Barbados, a member of the Fiscal Responsibility Mechanism in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a director of Jamaica Money Market Brokers International, and a director of West India Biscuit Company. He also serves as chair of the Ratings Committee of the Caribbean Sole Credit Rating Agency, CARICRIS, and the first vice president of the Barbados Museum and Historical Society. He has been a director of the Central Bank of Barbados since 2008 and a financial advisor to the Barbados Credit Union League since 2009. He is the 3rd principal of the Five Islands campus and was appointed on August 1st, 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to help me welcome to the stage our distinguished regional servant, Professor Carl Justin Robinson.
Thank you very much. Madam Governor General, I also would like to adopt the protocol established. I want to thank the Speaker for that very warm introduction. I have a vivid experience as a PhD student in England, being asked by my supervisor to go into Yorkshire at the museum there to give a lecture on his behalf. Not quite sure where I was going. I went a little early, and I was at the back seated, and the treasurer was giving his annual update. He said, you know, things have gone really well for us this year financially. We've turned it around. And we've improved so much that maybe next year we can afford to have some better speakers. So the welcome isn't always as warm as this evening. Okay, so I'm just making sure I get the hang of this clicker. Also, whenever I'm in St. Kitts, I always feel the need to say thanks to St. Kitts. You know, there are few blessings in life as a fantastic wife. And my wife spent the first, I think, 18 years of her life in Keon. So I have to say a special thank you to St. Kitts and Keon for having my special wife. So the topic tonight is resilience and shared prosperity, implications and imperatives for SIDS. And I'm going to share some brief thoughts, and hopefully we can have a bit of a discussion around that. So essentially, what is my thesis? What is my argument this evening? I argue that SIDS face some unique vulnerabilities. And I don't think there's anything earth-shattering about that. But given our very nature, resilience is not an option for us. It's a necessity. However, it is costly. So resilience is not an option, but an expensive necessity. I also then want to suggest that while our smallness, islandness makes us uniquely vulnerable, it gives us the potential to have high levels of social capital, which has been shown to be a critical element in resilience. And that's our secret weapon, that potential for high levels of social capital. And to attain that, we need to ensure we have a degree of shared prosperity. And I guess I wouldn't be true to my discipline, although I think it's critical here that for us to get there, some level of financial innovation is required. How do we pay for anything we speak about? So just as a bit of a background, where are we in the SIDS in terms of our economy and society? And in some ways, we have quite a lot to be proud of. If we look at some common measures, GDP per capita, or the output per person, many of our SIDS in our part of the world, we do extremely well. So if we look at a simple graph there of the output per person, a number of our small island states rank quite highly there. If we look at the Human Development Index, the most recent issue, a number of SIDS are classified as having very high levels of human development. St. Kitts and Nevis is the highest ranked Caribbean country on that index. So I think we have St. Kitts, Antigua, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and the Bahamas. These are our 5 that are in that very high level. And everyone else is classified as having high levels of human development. I think where we have some challenges which impinge on where we might want to go In terms of the vibrancy of our underlying economy, it's not necessarily where we would like that to be. If we look at real GDP growth, the output that we are creating, we tend to lag SIDS like Mauritius and other parts of the world. The high debt levels have been spoken a lot about. And then what I like to call, which I think goes at some of the heart of the social capital, that what I call a triple C crisis that we are confronted, where you have the climate crisis, and a lot has been said about that, the chronic non-communicable disease crisis. Caribbean person, we don't only have the fastest athletes in the world, or most beautiful beaches, but we have some of the highest rates of hypertension, diabetes, again, which all erode our social capital. And the final C, the crime crisis. The Caribbean is an incredibly violent place. Caribbean people are the most warm, loving, fun people in the world, but we murder each other at amazing rates. And it's something we don't want to normalize. I was having that conversation earlier because someone was saying, when you look at the crime per capita, it looks very high. But 20 murders a year in St. Kitts is way too much. I mean, I lived and studied in Manchester for 4 years. And homicides was not something I read about in the papers. I mean, you really don't have, well, when I was there, you really didn't have a murder a month in a big place like Manchester. If you go to places like Japan, the homicide rate is very low. So I would argue that we are plagued by this triple C crisis, which undermines a lot of the gains that we have made. Okay, so in terms of the heart of where we, so resilience. So I would argue, and I'm basing it on Hollins's 1978, that's sort of the benchmark. So resilience refers to a system's capacity to absorb shocks while retaining its core competence, its core functions. So resilience for us would encompass our responses to environmental and economic disruptions such as hurricanes, rising sea levels, global market shifts, supply chain disruptions, a variety of shocks. So how resilient is a system? What is the capacity of a system to absorb these shocks while retaining its core function? I think this slide, I hope, captures to some extent many aspects of our vulnerability. So we have a number of our nation states there. 2008 financial crisis, that's an example of a shock. What's the capacity of our system to really absorb that shock while continue functioning? If we look at Antigua and Barbuda, 2008 financial crisis triggered 4 years of negative economic growth. And over that period, they would have lost 21.8% of GDP. We look at the COVID crisis. In the 5 years prior to the COVID-19 crisis, Antigua would have had cumulative economic growth of 23.6%. The COVID crisis triggered 1 year of recession, where the country lost 17.5% of GDP in that 1 year. So 5 years, you build up 23.6%, and one external shock, 17.6. Bahamas, very weak growth before COVID, cumulative 4.1. COVID sets 23.4% loss in 1 year. So again, how do our societies absorb these shocks and bounce back? Barbados, 2008 financial crisis. It took the country there was 6 years of negative economic growth coming off of that crisis. And in some ways, that's kind of central to what I think about in terms of the resilience. It's not really an issue for us in SIDS as to if the shock is going to happen. It's when. The shocks are going to come. What's our capacity to absorb these shocks and really bounce back from them? Again, is a major policy issue, existential issue for our society. The other pillar on which my presentation stands is this notion of shared prosperity. We've had fair degrees of success in terms of per capita income, but is that prosperity shared? What is our income distribution? How do we generate economies that are both resilient and prosperous, but that prosperity is shared? So in the sense that this shared prosperity focuses a lot on the living standards of the less affluent and marginalized groups within our society. In particular, we tend to want to look at what is income growth at the bottom 40% of the income distribution. And one of the things I suggest is that we really don't know this in the Caribbean. We have very little data on our income distribution, what is happening at the lower levels of that distribution, so that we can have targeted and informed policy. And I have a sneaking hypothesis that some of our crime crisis could be linked to what is happening in that bottom part of our income distribution. Again, sustainability and equity. Is our economic growth sustainable over time? Again, we're encompassing the notion of the climate crisis. Human development, and then opportunities for social mobility and opportunity. So again, what are some of the unique challenges of SIDS coming out of that? And these are well known. Geographic isolation, islandness means you have high transportation costs, there's a distance from markets, the potential supply chain logistics and other problems. In many cases, small market size, limited resource base, economic volatility, and climate vulnerability. So what are the theoretical underpinnings of my brief talk tonight? So I really am sort of grounded in vulnerability theory associated with the work of Robert Chambers and social capital theory, Putnam 2000. These are some of the key items. And Putnam emphasizes that vulnerability isn't just about exposure to natural hazards, but structural weaknesses in a system, like reliance on a single economic sector, limited access to external markets. So it's not just about the natural hazards that makes us vulnerable, but are there systemic or structural features of our societies that make us vulnerable to shocks? And again, in SIDS, our structural vulnerabilities are magnified. We look at CNN and we see a major hurricane will hit part of Florida and destroy it, but it has no effect really on overall US GDP. Hurricane Maria hits Dominica, and people started arguing, well, how do you have more than 100% decline in GDP? Maybe the maximum decline should be 100%. But the damage from a hurricane in a SIDS can be equivalent to your entire GDP. Critical infrastructure that takes years to rebuild. So within the SIDS, we are, in that sense, uniquely vulnerable. And again, if we sort of just quickly, some of the components of that, what are the key elements? Exposure to hazards. To what extent is a system exposed to hazards? And I think we can clearly say that SIDS are quite heavily exposed to hazards. Well, again, the capacity and the coping mechanisms, which is really the critical element which we might want policy to focus on. You can't change your geography. You can't change your reality, but what you can build on is your capacity and the coping mechanism. And that's often argued and in the framework that your capacity and coping mechanisms really depend heavily on a number of structural and social economic factors. You have marginalized groups and others that then amplify the impact of these hazards and reduce the capacity to respond and cope to these hazards as they come, which again builds into the sensitivity to shocks and stresses. And that these shocks and stresses are dynamic in their nature. So there's a dynamic nature of vulnerability. So a pandemic was never in our frame of reference as a potential shock, unless you watch a lot of these movies and conspiracy theories. And I think COVID made me think I should pay more attention to some of these movies, which I often tend to dismiss. So what are some of the implications that come out of this framework for policy and planning in SIDS? Risk reduction to diversification. Also, and points 2 and 3 are sort of the, at least for me as a scholar working, some of the newer aspects that I don't think we've necessarily focused enough on, which is building into the social capital, building community resilience. How do we build resilience at the community level? And we speak a little bit more about that when we segue to social capital, addressing social inequality, because again, the vulnerability theory demonstrates quite persuasively, really, that vulnerability to shocks, the capacity to cope, is heavily linked to high degrees of social inequality. Marginalized groups, unequal groups within a society, they have a more adverse, severe reaction to the shocks, their capacity to respond. And then investing in adaptive infrastructure, which has been quite heavily discussed in the climate sense. Now, social capital theory, which I guess for me is a bit new delving into this. I sort of came through UWI in an era where we were taught by Andrew Downs and others about the numbers and quite hard econometric approaches to things. And in quite an influential book in a number of policy circles, 2000 book, The Collapse and Revival of American Society, called Bowling Alone. And it's really, the visual there is bowling alleys and so on across the US. That's a symbol. We're becoming quite deserted. Persons were just a single person in a bowling alley doing their bowling. And what he argues that social capital is a powerful force that impacts economic performance, civic engagement, individual well-being, and community resilience. What the theory emphasizes is that when social capital is high, communities tend to be more resilient, more cooperative, and better able to address collective challenges. He sort of identifies maybe 5 elements or components of social capital. So one is called bonding social capital. So the extent to which they are very close familial links. Persons share close bonds with family, friends, schoolmates, those kinds of strong bonds, bonding capital. Bridging capital, the extent to which in a community that these bonds can extend beyond your immediate, tightly bonded group, beyond your nuclear family, your extended family, persons you went to school with or you share some sort of bond with, the extent to which there are bonds that cross these types of bonding, so to speak. Then linking social capital. What's the capacity or experience in a community of being able to link with state agencies, other agencies, to be able to relate to those agencies to get resources to address their challenges. So is there a big distance between, let's say, a public and their civic institutions? Trust and reciprocity. And I guess Putnam's work got a lot of airplay, so to speak, in COVID, where there was a lot of research which showed that according to his metric where you can measure social capital, that communities, countries, that level of social capital was quite important in terms of the willingness of the public to follow the health directives, to sign up for vaccines, etc. One of the key variables separating the willingness of persons, communities, and countries to trust the authorities with the health information, to take on the vaccines, was really the level of social capital, especially the degree of trust and reciprocity. What is the degree of trust? An extreme end, you sort of make that in the old days of the British Empire, that the British built an empire on the notion that your word was your bond. And that crossed continents, that you could take someone at their word. So what is the level of trust? And in this framework, one of the key indicators of the degree of social capital is the willingness of the members of society to undertake civic engagement and participation. I guess this was written in the US context, so are dads willing to sign up to coach Little League? What's happening with the Red Cross? Those types of civic organizations, which really in many ways have a positive influence on life. What is the willingness to engage at a civic level? So I hope I haven't done too much violence to his framework. So if we see some value in social capital, then the implications for policy and planning really would be to encourage things like community-based disaster response programs, as distinct from everything being at the national level, community-led economic initiatives. Yes, I'm very keen on FREED, really promoting the civic engagement, volunteerism, and those types of things, and facilitate partnerships with external organizations. So what do I see then coming out of these two frameworks? What do I see as some of the policy imperatives for small island developing states? I like to think of myself as a practical, efficient person, and I never like to have what I call a wash pan of actions and initiatives that can be undertaken or somewhat esoteric. So if I were Prime Minister of SIDS for a week and they gave me a week to present a budget and some policies, what would I go with among the list of choices? So given our vulnerability, I would argue that we need to invest quite heavily in disaster preparedness and management. Sustainable energy solutions, investments in climate adaptation, investments in social capital, education reform, and promoting fiscal discipline. And I will sort of briefly touch on all of these. Again, given the region and given the neighborhood we live in, I think as a society, as institutions, we're just not aware, prepared, or ready enough for natural disasters. I think we need to invest in this. So Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, as part of its operational plan every year, employees here should be very aware of disasters, how to be ready for it, how to respond to it. As a bank, in your home, in our schools, our universities, these need to be things that we invest in building that awareness. I think we need to strengthen and expand early warning systems and disaster management capacity. I mean, as of Ascension, we benefit heavily from the volcano monitoring in Trinidad and Tobago, and that early warning, I would say, actually saved lives. I mean, I lived through the eruption in '79 as a resident in St. Vincent, and the fact that there has been so much more investment in that early warning capacity in St. Augustine, I think made a huge difference. Maybe I was very impressed, we have the country now into red zone, green zone, orange zone, how you move and how you mobilize. And I think given the neighborhood we live in, that we need to really invest heavily in that disaster management capacity. I'm still struck that when there is a natural disaster, we are still reliant on experts coming in to assess the damage. I think, again, given the neighborhood that we live in with our scarce dollar, if you have $10 to spend, how are you going to spend that $10? And I certainly think that the disaster preparedness, awareness, again, needs to rise to the top of that spending list. And the extent to which this can be community and organization-based. And I'm sort of linking that a bit to the social capital. My own view of Caribbean society is where we are. I think you have to meet people where they are. There's in my opinion, I mean, only so much trust in government and sometimes officialdom, but from what I sense, people have a high level of trust in their organization. So people become accountants, and the accounting profession, the chartered accounting body, that has a lot of influence on them. The lawyers at the Bar Association, and I think we need to use these types of organizations to really promote what we want across the society, and that a lot of this disaster preparedness awareness, if we can channel these through these institutions, our schools, our churches, where people are at, where they're comfortable, where there's a high level of trust, they have already chosen to engage with that institution, that we use those as vehicles to send those messages. Again, sustainable energy. Again, I think we need to prioritize investments in renewable energy, and I don't see it as a climate change mitigation initiative. Because if you think of climate change, there are two aspects: mitigation, adaptation. I think with all the will in the world, if Caribbean societies, if we all had zero carbon footprints, it would have no effect on the climate. So I don't think mitigation is our business to some extent. Mitigation is really a priority for the big polluters. Adaptation is our business, but I see transitioning to renewable energy more as a way of driving resilience, in that it can give us a degree of energy independence. So even if solar energy costs you more on average, I see it as a worthwhile investment in that we are not vulnerable to the upswings and downswings of the global oil market. So we are vulnerable to these external shocks, but with the advances in technology and renewable energy, we actually have an opportunity to reduce one source of economic vulnerability and volatility if we invest in renewable energy so that we are free from the vicissitudes of the global energy markets. Again, climate adaptation. Again, I think that should be the real focus of our policy. And it's really not that I have any, I'm not a gas guzzler or not concerned about the climate. I think I'm very sensitive to that. But again, as small island states, we have limited resources. What are you going to spend on your resources? Where are you going to give your tax incentives? We have a fragile tax base. It's not clear to me that with all the best intentions in the world, that the best use of our tax expenditures is to incentivize mitigation, when really we are not the cause of the climate problem. And if we went to negative carbon, the climate change will still happen, that we should really focus on climate adaptation and mandatory climate resilient building codes. Governor, is your campus, can your campus withstand a Cat 4? And that needs to rise to the top of your planning. We are rebuilding the Central Bank of Barbados to make it Cat 4 resilient. So I think mandatory climate resilient building codes with timelines and incentives to transition to that, I think it has the potential to trigger a significant building boom in the Caribbean. And I think this is important in the sense that a lot of our capital cities, where a lot of resources are invested, they really were built for a maritime-driven industry, access to the port. I mean, every time I go downtown St. John's, I think this was suitable when it was built, when everything was built to get the sugar exported. But in the modern sense, it's really a sitting duck for a Cat 4 storm, and that goes, I think, across all our capital cities. And I see the potential. So the urban renewal, I mean, nothing revolutionary there. I mean, Mia Motley speaks of what she called it a roof-to-reefs initiative in Barbados, where we want to get roofs across the country at a certain level of resilience. And again, I think that has the potential to generate a building boom with long-term benefits. Investing in the social capital. And again, here, I guess I'm a little fuzzier in my thoughts, because I think, we don't have the data. I think we really need to invest in understanding what is happening in the bottom end of our income distribution. We have these high levels of per capita income across the board, but do we really understand what is happening, persons in that? Well, I'm using Sen's. He focuses a lot on the 40%. I guess we can get a good debate about that, about whether the bottom 40% is where you should focus, but it's somewhere to start. What are lives like at that level? What is the capacity to live a decent modern life as we think about it? And I started thinking about this a lot during COVID-19 in Barbados, when you had the pandemic, the hotels shut down. At the time, I think I had just demitted as chairman of the NIS, so I was still very close to the persons, and the government was paying out NIS payments. And it really came across to us that 90% of these hotel workers collecting the benefits, they were not making $2,000 US a month. They were making less than 2,000. How do you function in modern Barbados on an income of less than 2,000 US a month? And I think the cost of living in St. Kitts is not that different from Barbados. So I think we really need to understand that bottom 40% of the income distribution, and what policies can we put in place to really improve it there. And I think sometimes that drives some of that diminution of social capital, distance from the state. So you have a brand new hotel project. The state announces it triumphantly. It's a big achievement. However, what I sense anecdotally is the public is really not enthused, because if that hotel generates 300 new jobs, 250 of them are less than 2,000 US dollars a month, which is no longer a life-changing job in Barbados. Maybe it was a generation ago. So how do we deal with that bottoming for why are they at that level? What policies can be developed to actually address their issues? And partnering, the role of civil society, incentives for civic engagement and volunteerism. Societies always benefit from that non-governmental sector, and there's evidence that there's quite a lot of trust there. And I will talk a little bit more of that when I segue to the financing segment. But as I was saying, just a bit of it, I was saying to the guys earlier, I currently serve as the president of the Barbados Museum and Historical Society. And if we wanted 20 million US dollars next year for a project, we could raise that money. If we wanted to do something in schools, something for heritage, we can unlock that money very easily. And it fits quite nicely in that social capital, in that there's a high level of trust in institutions like the museum, and high net worth individuals, ordinary citizens, are extremely comfortable and willing in channeling their financial resources through these mechanisms. I think our corporations have a much more significant role to play in addressing deficits in the education system and other aspects. And we speak a little bit more about that. What am I doing for time? Investing in human capital, education reform. As an educator, I always try to resist the temptation that the solution to everything is education. But I certainly, again, if I was that prime minister for 10 days, I would want to legislate universal early childhood education. I think that's one of the gaps. There's just a lot of evidence that what happens in that first 4 years of life makes a big difference to outcomes later. And that may be the particular period of time where the vulnerable, the persons in that 40%, so the kids growing up in those households, that may be precisely the period where they're falling behind, and when they transition to the public systems we have, they're unable to catch up. In terms of the education system, I would argue that we've had a lot of, and I think it applies to health, we've had a lot of success in providing access. So most of our small island developing states, you have access to primary, secondary, and maybe a community college. It's at low or no cost. What we haven't focused enough on, which now needs to be the shift, is on the outcomes of those systems and the accountability. I mean, CXC shocked all of us last year or sometime this year. And if my memory is correct, what they reported was, based on the CXC results across the Caribbean, less than 5% of the persons sitting CXCs were successful at both math and English. Can you imagine that? Now most of you in here like me are shocking because, you picking them bright. You're in a circle where you're deciding whether they go to the college or they go abroad and so on. But we are missing, so we've invested massive amounts of money in primary and secondary education. And we know that many entry-level jobs now are asking for math and English. So if you have less than 5% of the age cohort succeeding in math and English, what sort of jobs can they transition to? They can't even matriculate into many of our community colleges. They can't get into the university. So again, focusing on the outcomes. I think we now need to take it to the next level. We have built in the access. There are the schools. You can get in there. There are school meals programs. There are all sorts of supports. But who is holding the education system responsible for the outcomes of that system when a child leaves school? And what is shocking about that CXC number, though, is that even though that pass rate sounds low, hidden beneath that is the significant percentage of children who don't make it to fifth form. They actually don't write any O levels. So we've invested in providing this massive degree of access, but the outcomes are really quite inadequate just at pass rates. And if we move beyond pass rates, when somebody gets 5 CXCs or 6, including math and English, what are their skills? What skills do they have? What is their capacity for problem solving? So I view the education reform in that sense that one of the most critical policy imperatives is to move beyond access. So in the sense the access is necessary but not sufficient. So we need to have a system that we are focusing on outcomes and holding teachers, principals. I mean, you don't want to sound too private sector, but when you're a principal of a school and only 40% of the students in your school get to write O levels, who is holding you accountable? Who is responsible? I mean, everybody gets paid and goes on as normal. So I think that investing in human capital is a critical component. And I'm going to swing by this quickly. There's a lot said on that, and in my line of vision, I have Arnold, who knows a lot more about this than me. But fiscal discipline, the crises are going to come. And my colleague and I, Professor Moore, have invested quite a bit of time in this, and we have a pretty detailed publication coming out for the central bank anniversary, really looking at these the need for fiscal buffers. And our basic thesis is it's not when the crisis is going to come, it's if. So it's not if, but when, and the scale of the crisis. But because we have a built-in culture of fiscal indiscipline, we don't have the fiscal buffers. When these crises come, and the governments should really be going counter-cyclical and be able to assist in the crisis. Because you don't have any buffers, in many cases you are most forced to go pro-cyclical, which makes the problem worse. Again, I think we need to legislate these things. We need fiscal rules that are backed by legislation. We need to restrict the ability of our central, I know Governor Antoine would never do this, but he might not always be in this chair. that money creation, I certainly had a bird's eye view of what money creation can do in the Barbados context, and then the role of independent fiscal council. So again, not popular. A lot of this is going to cost a lot of money. This is an expensive transition. And what are some of our financial solutions? So if we look at global capital, the multilateral system, and then philanthropic and private global capital, and in some of the local capital, private and philanthropic. And I say that there's a financial reality check for small island states as we approach my wonderful policy mix. We have unsustainable levels of public debt. In many cases, we are in excess of 60%. There's limited access to global capital. And I think where I think the big financing challenge comes is that investments in resilience and shared prosperity are really often what we may call public goods. So if you invest in making downtown Basseterre more flood resistant, there isn't really a revenue stream from that project. So it's really a public good. Investment in our schools, some aspects of so on, these have that public good feature, and they're not necessarily amenable to private investment. So again, in an economic sense, a public good, we would argue for simplicity, it's really a type of product that the private sector would never invest in. The example I often use is a lighthouse. Once you build a lighthouse out there, can you make money from it? Because once it's on, everybody can benefit from it, whether they pay for it or not. And a lot of investments that build resilience and social capital have that public good feature. And in terms of the disaster risks, private insurance is often inadequate for that type of risk, because insurance really works on the principle of pooling. You know, you have a pool, you sell car insurance to a pool of drivers. Some are good, bad, and average drivers, but the probability of my having an accident is not highly correlated with the probability of you having an accident, so they can take that risk. But in terms of the climate risk, for example, a single storm can really cause damage across the chain. So the risks are highly correlated. So normal insurance products are not going to be useful. So I think in terms of financing, we need cheap money. We need moratoriums. We need low interest rates, long maturities. I think given where many of our governments are, the financing has to be, in many cases, off the government's balance sheet, which I'm arguing that we need to create structures that projects for resilience and social capital can be funded or can be done through non-governmental vehicles and some quasi-equity types of financing, which I think then leads to a need for reform of our multilateral institutions. Multilateral institutions are not designed to provide the level and type of financing that we face given the urgency and the scale of the crisis. Are there innovative ways to clear our government's balance sheet so that they can undertake some of these investments, especially the ones that have a public good feature, which are not really going to channel through the private sector? And as an addendum to that, do we need alternative institutional forms and some innovative financing instruments? Now, the Bridgetown Initiative is a classic example of trying to confront the crisis. So what is it asking for? Emergency liquidity access. So you get hit by a storm, you need to respond, because we all know the story. You get hit, you do the damage assessment, there are all the pledges, and now the pledges don't come, and when they come slowly. But can the global system provide you with emergency access? Can we restructure some of our debt to allow us to take on the sustainable? And then the climate adaptation funding, how do you fund that aspect? And I think I can skip over that. Let me come. So I give the example here This is a 1648 bond issued in Holland, precisely designed to deal with managing their waterways and make it successful. And this made big news in academic circles a couple of years ago when Yale has a financial history library, and they came across this document. So this is one of the few examples of a perpetual bond. So this was a bond that was issued in 648, that it had no maturity date. And on finding this document, the Yale professor actually went across and collected hundreds of years of interest because the payments were still due. And this was not issued by a state. This was a non-governmental. So this is one of 5 bonds known to exist. And I can't say that Dutch word. The bonds were issued by something there. But it was a board, a water board, composed of landowners and leading citizens that managed dikes and canals and a 20-mile stretch of the Lower Rhine in Holland. So the bond, written on goatskin, was issued on May 15, 1648, for the sum of 1,000 guilders, and the bond would pay 5% interest in perpetuity. And the interest rate was then reduced to 3.5%, and that water board has gone through many ownership iterations. So what do I find interesting about this? So the perpetual feature of the bond. So when I studied finance, one of the things they taught me is that a project has a cash flow pattern, and you should seek to match the financing structure to the cash flow pattern of the project. So if you are investing in sustainability, the natural environment, the ecosystem, that seems to me to provide perpetual benefits. That's going into the future. So having a perpetual instrument seems ideal matching. And in the case of small island states, I think the fact that it's perpetual reduces one of our big risks, the refinancing risk. So when a bond is issued, states can often service the interest. The challenge is when you come maturity and then you are looking to refinance, can you roll it over? So again, I want to suggest that our multilateral institutions, can they be bold? Can they truly innovate? And for these climate adaptation projects, which are really public goods, can they be innovative and have perpetual bonds or even preference shares if you don't want it, a preference share? This is our ownership in the patrimony of humanity, that natural environment. And then alternative organizational and governance institutions for some of these adaptation projects, as well as the civic. So again, in the UK, things like public mutuals are well known. A number of hospitals are actually not owned by the state. They're not owned by the private sector. They have an ownership structure similar to that water bond that I discussed. Or they are owned by a number of investors where the intent is philanthropic. I think of my own institution, UWI. Who owns UWI? And we've had to encounter that recently as we were trying to do a loan issue, and as part of the governance, it was this big thing, well, who owns this damn thing? Because we don't have any shareholders. There's no such thing. But you have this legal fiction. You don't have the debt overhang problem that the states have. If they are focused on civic engagement, social capital, as well as adaptation projects, they are not profit-oriented, so they're dealing with that issue. And also these institutions, which all the research shows, these are now the high trust institutions. These are the institutions that people trust. People don't trust governments the way they used to, but they trust their professional bodies that they belong to. They join the Lions, they join the JCs, they put a lot of time and effort into these non-governmental institutions. So I think these organizational and governance innovations go along with that. So going to just a quick summary of my points. Investing in disaster preparedness and management capacity, investing in the renewable energy ecosystem, mandatory climate resilient building codes, universal early childhood education, emphasis on educational outcomes and accountability mechanisms, incentives for volunteerism and civic engagement, and the enabling framework and incentives for public, mutuals, and philanthropic type organizations. Because again, these have a high level of trust. And I want to end by saying, achieving resilience and shared prosperity is a complex equation. I think we must solve through civic engagement, innovative organizational and financial solutions, and international collaboration. And I really see your call to action as individuals, as organizations, in your personal lives, in your organizations where you lead and have influence. That let's work towards an island future where resilience and shared prosperity are a way of life. So now it's your turn. If I missed, what do you think? What are your questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. I wouldn't dare. He gave a nice summary, so I was going to do that. But since he's already done that, I will save you. That pain. Thank you very much, Dr. Robinson, for your words of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, at this stage, we'd like to have some interaction with our guest speaker. So we invite you to ask some questions. We'll have a question.
to your neighbors, your big neighbors outside in the US or around. It's so useful sometimes to just look at the potential and work on that. If anybody had told Lee Kuan Yew in the 60s that the small drop of Singapore can actually become an industrial or an economical giant, nobody would have believed them. Same thing goes to Dubai. If they really wanted to tackle climate change in the desert, they wouldn't have done anything at all. The main focus, sir, income from nowhere, like create income or create money coming in, and then work accordingly with smaller batches. Thank you, sir. Quite enjoyed your lecture, actually.
Okay, thank you, very kind.
My name is Bantu Campbell. I'm also from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, working at the ECCB. Okay, so I was listening to your lecture, which I think was very insightful, but I wanted you to expand on the focus on the 40%, because just permit me to be devil's advocate. If there were 20 persons in a room, 10 billionaires, 10 millionaires, the 10 millionaires would be in the bottom 40, but that's not necessarily indicative of a crisis situation. And no matter what initiative you do, there will always be a bottom 40%. So would they look at how much percent is below the poverty line or standard of living as opposed to just a blanket 40%? So if you could expand on that, just for my understanding.
Okay, so that's a very good question. So that's drawing heavily on Amartya Sen's work, and he has this notion that, you know, poverty is not an absolute concept. So you sort of draw a poverty line, but somebody who feels poor in one society, at the same level of income, they don't necessarily feel poor in a different society. So Sen has this notion that poverty is really is a relative and not absolute concept. So do you have the resources to access, for want of a better term, the good or decent life in the society in which you live? So bottom, but that person at the bottom 10% in the United States feels disadvantaged. They are disgruntled. They're not socially engaged. They are not able to engage the United States society as a normal, fully integrated citizen. So that's one aspect behind it. And as I said, I'm fuzzy about that because we don't know a lot. So maybe when we study that bottom 40%, they're fine. They're not a problem. They're living good, normal lives, and we don't need to bother about it. But I do have the suspicion that if we were to have the data to do that type of Lorentz type curve across the Caribbean, we might see that we have skewed distribution, and that is basically struggling to cope at an everyday level in terms of what is seen as normal life in that society. So I think something we need to find out more about, because I'm still grappling with why does a place like Barbados have such a high crime rate? When I look at labor force participation rates, again, these things are all declining, suggesting that there is some increasing degree of marginalization. But I'm agnostic on it. I'm open-minded on it. But I think it's something we need to delve into a lot more, because we are making a lot of policy without really an understanding of that income distribution. Gentleman coming at it. And trust a fellow Vincentian to ask the hard question.
This question wouldn't be so hard. It would be very simple. You spoke about quite a few things, but I want to know, how would you factor in these three things: trade, health, and social safety nets. Just those three.
Ooh, okay, sir. And that was the easy one. And you know, so a lot of what I'm thinking about, so let me start with social safety net. Caribbean societies, on the surface, we invest quite a lot in our safety nets. There's a lot of access to education. There's a lot of access to health. And I think the safety nets that we have in place, I think are a major factor why we tend to score that high on the human development index. So when I think of the social safety net, it's there, but how effective is it? And I think that goes to the heart of what I was speaking about in terms of education, healthcare. We have these safety nets in place, but what is the quality of the service? So I operate in Antigua, and there is a lot of investment in public healthcare, but it's also very clear to me that the mindset in Antigua is if I get sick, I want to get on a plane to Miami. So you have so you have a healthcare system. What are the outcomes? Despite this investment, we still have this NCD crisis. So the safety net is there. I think it's important, but I'm very keen on to what are the outcomes? What is the quality? Because it's a lot of investment. Health, I think, is critical. I guess I kind of lumped the health and the education together as similar issues. The health I see as critical with that CCC crisis. It's clear that we are investing a lot in human capital, but because of this chronic disease crisis, there's significant morbidity and mortality, which really erodes the return we get from that investment. We have a lot of lost sick days, persons dying early from these diseases, and just the cost of care. So, for example, in Barbados, governments get judged a lot on the quality of healthcare. And the public complains a lot about the quality. And my colleagues in the medical field say, you know, the hospital is just drowning under the NCD crisis. It was not designed for managing persons on a significant number of persons for 15, 20 years on dialysis and so on. So with the safety net and the healthcare, my focus really is on the quality and the outcomes. I think we've done a good job in providing the access, but what is the accountability of these systems? What is the quality that we are getting for that significant investment? Trade, well, again, trade is just part of our lives. As an island nation, small island nation, one has to trade, so I didn't really delve too much into that trade aspect because I sort of take that as a given, and it's not my expertise anyway.
Yes, thanks. You had a slide about the number of years it took to rebound from a recession or some sort of economic crisis. And of course, it showed that the small island states take a very long time. I'm wondering what are the possible big, maybe three things that we could do to reduce that time to recover, given, of course, our small size, etc.
Yes, sir. I guess if I had the answer to that, I'd be like Arthur Lewis collecting my Nobel Prize. But my own thesis, which I've argued in some of my published work, is that because of the fiscal indiscipline, because we don't have the fiscal buffers, when the shocks hit our small island developing states, the budget is already in a bad state. So the states do not have the capacity to engage in sort of your standard basic economic counter-cyclical fiscal policy. The shock pushes you into recession, the state then steps in. But the state doesn't have that capacity. In fact, in many states, because it's an external shock, which affects your foreign exchange earnings, Countries then face Forex balance of payments crises. They're then going into structural adjustment programs, whether homemade or from the IMF, which then calls for further fiscal restraint. So because of the fiscal weaknesses, at the precise point when the state should be spending money to jumpstart the economy, the state has to pull back. And I think that's a major factor in why our recessions are deeper and we take longer to bounce back, because on top of the external shock, you now have the fiscal adjustment to deal with, which is really dampening growth. I had a slide on it initially, and then I took it out because I didn't want to sound too wishy-washy on it, but because it's really the big holy grail. How do we have some more economic diversification? How do we reduce reliance on the single sector? And I think you gentlemen who spoke first maybe in a way alluded to that. What sort of economy you want to build? But I tend to think that diversification is a whole lecture in it, because it's something we are aware of. We know it. There's been a lot of discussion, but moving to a more diversified type of economy with your limited space and resources and so on. So my own view is that tourism will and should remain important, but tourism should become less important in a relative but not an absolute sense by the emergence of new sectors. I think the investment in renewable energy has the potential to give us a sector that is home-based, that is saving foreign exchange. So I see that as a critical element of the diversification. And I hope I have given you a half-decent answer.
Good evening, Stephanie Pascal, Dominican, junior economist here at the ECCB. My question has to do with the policy suggestion in regards to universal education, early childhood education. You gave this staggering statistic about CXE with the pass rates. And when we really look at what has happened throughout our countries, we would say, and you agreed as well, you would say we have made access much more widely available. So why then are you proposing to create more access, as we are seeing that the results are declining compared to looking at curriculum restructuring, looking at better strategies? So just expound on that as to why you chose more access compared to other strategies.
Okay, so yes, good question. So I suppose as a little boy in St. Vincent, going to the Grenadines a lot, and when the boats break down, you can't stop in the middle of the ocean. So there was a saying that you have to fix and sail at the same time. So I think we have to address the outcome deficiencies in our primary and secondary school system. But at the same time, we also have to invest in providing that access for early childhood education, because it's one area of access that we have not really gone into across the board. We've really focused on the primary and secondary, but there's just too much evidence coming out in terms of research in education that those first 3-4 years are just quite critical in brain formation, discipline, how you actually succeed in the education system. If we don't have intervention at this stage, then a lot of the investment at the higher level might not give you the returns. And those early years are sometimes where poverty, unstable households, etc., where there is the greatest impact. So you have someone who is a low-level worker in a hotel, and we were talking earlier, they are working the graveyard shift. Who's taking care of their kids when they're doing all of that? I mean, unless somebody asked about the bottom 40%, and I'm not always clear that when we are making policy, we really have an understanding of lives and what are the challenges there. So I see the early childhood intervention as just critical because of the evidence. And if you don't have that base, then the investment at a higher level, you're not going to get the returns.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, we will move on to the next segment, but we do want to thank you for the questions that you posed to our guest speaker this evening. Thank you once again. So, Dr. Robinson, we have a small token of appreciation to present to you, and to do the honors, we'd like to invite up our Chief Director of Policy, Ms. Tracy Polius, to present that token to you. Thank you once again, Dr. Robinson, for your words of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, as is customary, and in building on the tradition of augmenting the knowledge base of our educational institutions, we now move to the presentation of the 16th Sir Arthur Lewis Memorial Book Award. And to do the honors for us this evening, we will call on Ms. Carmen Blanchard Brown to introduce the book award. Carmen?
Your Excellency, the Governor General, I wish to adopt the protocol so ably established. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It gives me great pleasure to present the 16th Annual Sir Arthur Lewis Memorial Book Award to the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College. This occasion marks another significant milestone in our shared commitment to advancing education and fostering intellectual growth within the Eastern Caribbean Union. The Sir Arthur Lewis Memorial Book Award was established in 2009 to honor the life and legacy of the late Sir Arthur Lewis, the Caribbean's Nobel laureate and one of the pioneers of development economics. Sir Arthur believed that the advancement of nations was rooted in the development of their people, particularly in empowering the youth through education. His teachings emphasized the importance of knowledge in shaping a better future. It is in that spirit that we present this award. At the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, our commitment to public education and community outreach has always been driven by the belief that knowledge is a key tool for transformation. This is why we place such value on supporting the academic development of students across the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. This collection of books presented to the college students some of the most recent and widely sought publications in the fields of development economics, political science, and literature. The books are an invaluable addition to the library of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College. We encourage the students to read and research regularly. With the help of these resources, we are confident that the students of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College will be well prepared to emerge the next generation of leaders who will continue to shape the future of our region and beyond. We now welcome Mrs. Teresa Smith to present the Sir Arthur Lewis Memorial Book Award. Thank you.
Congratulations, and thank you once again. For work that you continue to do in St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Established. Good evening and welcome to the 2024 Eastern Caribbean Currency Union ECCU Bank of the Year Awards. This year is especially significant as we are honoring the bank which will receive the inaugural ECCU Distinguished Bank of the Year Award. The ECCU Bank of the Year Awards recognize commercial banks which have made outstanding contributions to the overall development of the people they serve throughout the ECCU. The awards are presented to banks that are judged to have demonstrated excellence to the highest level in 5 categories. These are corporate social responsibility, customer service, financial education and empowerment, support to micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs, and technological innovation. The inaugural ECCU Distinguished Bank of the Year Award will be presented to the bank that executed an exceptional strategic initiative between September 2023 and August 2024, resulting in a competitive edge in the market. In addition, the recipient demonstrated commendable performance in 3 of 5 other adjudged categories, with customer service being a required category. The 5 esteemed judges for this year's Bank of the Year Awards were Denise Williams-Frank of the Banking and Monetary Operations Department, Michael Morgan of the Financial Sector Supervision Department, Michelle Bellot of the Office of Risk Management, Samora Cherubin of the Research, Statistics and Data Analysis Department, and yours truly, Villette Benjamin of the Legal Services Department as head judge. The ECCB commends the 11 commercial banks which submitted the 35 entries for this year's ECCU Bank of the Year Awards. The judging process included those banks that were shortlisted for interview. It also included electronic submissions and online voting. We heartily applaud and congratulate the banks that were shortlisted for the interview stage. Before we proceed to the nominees for the 5 awards, join me in inviting the participating banks to receive their certificates of participation. Out of Angola, we have the National Bank of Angola. From Wadadli, Antigua and Barbuda, ECCB, Caribbean. Next, we have CIBC, Antigua. Followed by Eastern Caribbean Amalgamated Bank. From the Nature Isle of the Caribbean, the Commonwealth of Dominica, we have National Bank of Dominica Limited. Hailing from the Spice Isle, Grenada, we have Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited. From the Sugar City, St. Christopher and Nevis, CIBC St. Kitts. We also have St. Kitts, Nevis, Anguilla National Bank. Coming to us from the Helen of the West, First National Bank St. Lucia Limited. Next, we have Bank of St. Lucia Limited. And Republic Bank EC Limited. We now move on to the presentation of the awards. We commence with the area of corporate social responsibility. The recipient of the 2024 ECCU Bank of the Year Award for Corporate Social Responsibility demonstrates how it exhibits company values through positive influence on surrounding communities through environmental, youth, women, and senior citizens programs and/or sponsorships. The shortlisted nominees for this category are Bank of St. Lucia Limited, Republic Bank EC Limited, and Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited. And the recipient for the 2024 ECCU Bank of the Year Award for Corporate Social Responsibility is Bank of St. Lucia Limited. The recipient of the 2024 ECCU Bank of the Year Award for Customer Service demonstrates the delivery of highly personalized commercial and retail banking products and services. It supports and promotes client relationships and gives commendable priority to staff development. The shortlisted nominees for this category are CIBC Antigua, Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, and National Bank of Dominica Limited. The 2024 ECCU Bank of the Year Award for Customer Service is presented to Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited. To demonstrate its commitment to promoting financial education and empowerment, the recipient of the 2024 ECCU Bank of the Year Award for Financial Education and Empowerment gears its efforts towards enriching its customers' understanding of financial services and products, entrepreneurship, and general savings and investment issues. There were 2 shortlisted nominees for this category: Bank of St. Lucia Limited and National Bank of Dominica Limited. This year's award for the financial education and empowerment goes to the Bank of St. Lucia Limited. Demonstrated novel delivery of initiatives or policies that enhance the bank's products and services by providing innovative technological solutions for market needs is the key characteristic of the recipient of the 2024 ECCU Bank of the Year Award for Technological Innovation. This bank uses digital channels to enhance customer experience and seeks to heighten its efficiency in the use of technology. The shortlisted nominees for this category are CIBC Antigua and National Bank of Dominica Limited. The recipient for the 2024 ECCU Bank of the Year Award for Technological Innovation is CIBC Antigua. We now address the category of support to micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs. The recipient of the 2024 ECCU Bank of the Year Award for support to MSMEs is recognized for the invaluable contributions it makes to economic growth, job creation, and provision of public goods and services. The award for support to MSMEs goes to the Commercial Bank, which shows commendable efforts in assisting these organizations through lending and other support, such as approved guarantees, dollar value of accumulated guarantees, promotional or sensitization efforts, new jobs created due to financing, funding to women entrepreneurs, creation of a business unit or digital support systems for MSMEs, collaborative efforts with organizations that support MSMEs. The shortlisted nominees for this category were Bank of St. Lucia Limited, ECCB Caribbean, and Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited. And the 2024 ECCU Bank of the Year Award for support to MSMEs goes to Bank of St. Lucia Limited. And by now, I'm sure that you've been at the edges of your seats, waiting for us to announce the 2024 ECCU Distinguished Bank of the Year Award. The commercial bank receiving the 2024 ECCU Distinguished Bank of the Year Award is recognized for its capacity to transform challenges into opportunities within a dynamic business landscape through its strategic initiatives and business practices. The shortlisted nominees for this category were Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, Bank of St. Lucia Limited, National Bank of Dominica Limited, and CIBC Antigua. It is our distinct honor to award the 2024 and first ever ECCU Distinguished Bank of the Year Award to Bank of St. Lucia Limited. All right, thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies.
Thank you, Willett, for so ably executing your duties. We'd like to congratulate all the winning banks this evening, especially Bank of St. Lucia. Almost had a clean sweep there. We want to encourage you to continue to put our region and put our people first as we continue along the path, as our governor likes to say, along the path of our big push to double the size of economies in the next 10 years. And you are indeed a very important player in this effort. Governor, we'd like you to remain on stage, and we'd also like to invite on stage again Mrs. Byron Cassis as we present to you a little token of appreciation to you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Governor. So, ladies and gentlemen, yes, you'll be back shortly. Yes, yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's getting a little warmer. We've had the Bank of the Year Awards. Just as a prelude to this, we are aware that the ECCB has won several prestigious international awards over the last few years. Our very own governor has received the award for Governor of the Year. We received international award. Yes, give him a. Amen. Let's big up our governor. We received awards for our Parliament notes. We received international awards for our ECCB Connects program. Tonight, we're going to be receiving another award, the International Banknote Society Banknote of the Year Award, our $2 note. Let me just give you a little context. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank launched its 40th anniversary $2 commemorative banknote on 1st December 2023 in Antigua and Barbuda. The note was designed and produced in collaboration with the bank's currency partner, De La Rue, and features the latest in currency security and innovation. It also celebrates the region's heritage. A portrait of the legendary former West Indies cricketer, Sir Isaac Vivian Alexander Richards, affectionately known in the cricketing world as the Master Blaster. Those of you who are too young to know about Vivian Richards, please go on YouTube and look it up. The guy was a destroyer. So the Master Blaster is also featured on the note. The ECCB captured the 2023 Banknote of the Year Award from the International Banknote Society, IBNS. The IBNS selected the ECCB's $2 commemorative note as the Banknote of the Year from a pool of almost 100 newly designed and widely circulated banknotes released in 2023. Almost 100. Notes from 50 countries representing 3 continents, Africa, Asia, and South America, 5 island nations, and the Middle East were nominated for the award. Now hear this. According to the IBNS, the EC $2 commemorative note was the overwhelming favorite. Let me say that again. It was the overwhelming favorite from the onset of the voting. So we had our own Usain Bolt moment. The race was over before it even began. From the onset, it was the overwhelming favorite. So I now invite Mr. Sam Assad, a representative. Okay. We will show you a short video clip of the notes, and then we will invite a representative from the IBNS to come forward. Let's take a look at the video clip.
Introducing the EC $2 commemorative note.
In celebration of the ECCB's 40th anniversary, the $2 note is elegantly marked with ruby red highlights. A closer look at the note will reveal an aquatic design which depicts our region's rich marine life. The window of the note provides a glimpse of our fauna, delicately captured in the aqua blue tinted holographic foil. The EC $2 note also features the latest in currency security and innovation. It celebrates our region's heritage as it showcases our legendary cricketer, Sir Vivian Richards, the Master Blaster. The EC $2 note will be available at commercial banks throughout the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union from 6 December, and you can use it to conduct your normal business. The EC $2 commemorative note, security, innovation, and celebration.
ECCB is doing things, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing things. So I now invite Mr. Sam Assad, a representative of the IBNS, to present the award for the 2023 Banknote of the Year to the Director of the Currency Management Department at the ECCB, Mr. Rosbert Humphrey, to offer brief remarks.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, upon the first moments when the banknote was issued and we had the pleasure of seeing the colors, the design, the security features, and everything that went into the $2 note, the world of banknote collectors and the industry of the banknotes and the IBNS in particular was thrilled to see the level of dedication and innovation that ECCB actually went through to create such an amazing bank. There was a voting that took around 3 months to complete. There was around 2,000 members, and the overwhelming majority of votes came in favor of the magnificent $2 note. So congratulations to the ECCB, congratulations to everybody behind it. A well much deserved.
Thank you so much, Mr. Assad. And congratulations to the Currency Management Department and ECCB. Real quick, those of you who know it, he said. All right, good. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, we are near the end. We'd like to invite our Governor, Timothy N.J. Antoine, to give a few brief closing remarks. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies, Leon Bullen, Senior Economist here at ECCB. I will stand on the protocols established, but I do need and must recognize the Governor General, Dame Marcella Bird, Governor General of St. Kitts and Nevis, Deputy Prime Minister Hanley, Chairman of Monetary Council, Premier of Anguilla, Honorable Dr. Ellis Webster, and also the Monetary Council Finance Minister of Grenada, Honorable Dennis Cornwall. Everyone else, welcome. You certainly don't want me to go through that list now. But I especially want to recognize the students in the room, whether you are from CFBC, and of course the young people from Scanaipa. I especially welcome you. I like to hang around young people. I get energy. I get inspiration. I get excited. We work for you. So by the way, welcome to the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Welcome to our campus. We are your central bank and we work for you. I also want to hail a shout out to all those who've joined this broadcast online, social media platforms, but also via our radio and television stations across the currency union. Been getting notes, WhatsApp messages from some, and they are receiving very well our session, our ceremony, the lecture and the award ceremony this evening. Professor Robinson, thank you for a wonderful lecture in your unpretentious but very direct way. An OECS man of whom we are very proud. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your perspective with us. And I'm not going to go into the lecture. We don't have the time for that. But notice he said, if I were Prime Minister for a week, this is the 5 things I would do. And as he went on, he said, if I were Prime Minister for 10 days, this is what I would do. So if this lecture had gone on any longer, I suspect you would have been asking for an extended term. I say no more on that for now. All right? Very exciting, inspiring. We have to discuss that some more. I do want to thank our banks, all of our banks who were nominated. You were recognized for what you did. And of course, to our winners, our awardees. I'll say 2 things about the award, well, 3 things. 1, the Governor of Central Bank has absolutely nothing to do with these awards. Yes, young lady, I heard that laugh. We have a judge, we have a team of judges. We leave it to them. The criteria is there, the public has a say, and then they make the decisions. I get a note saying these are the awardees. And I'm comfortable with the team, so no issues there. My second comment is to say, Clearly, evidently, St. Lucia is on a roll. It should not surprise us. There was the Olympics, Julian Alfred. Then came CPL, St. Lucia Kings, and now ECCU Bank of the Year Award. So congratulations to St. Lucia. St. Lucia is our largest member, by the way. It accounts for about 25% of the ECCU economy. So congratulations to St. Lucia, Bank of St. Lucia. And the third thing I'll say about the awards is that we introduced last year the award for SMEs, small, medium enterprises, small businesses. And the main premise for that award, the main determinant of that award, is the support of our banks for our partial credit guarantee program. If you've never heard of it, very simply put, we launched this program in October 2020, middle of the pandemic, to support small businesses. You can get up to $700,000 as a guarantee through your bank, credit union, or development bank. Not all of our credit unions are participating. They're now coming on board. A couple of our development banks have already started. Development Bank in St. Lucia, Grenada Development Bank, for sure those have started. Others are hopefully going to come online. But it's open to everyone. And we are very keen to see more take-up of that program. To date, we've had about 130 guarantees, about 37 in Grenada, I believe about 35 in St. Lucia, and then St. Vincent, and that's the, and we have 2 in St. Kitts. We want to see more take-up of that program. The loans issued so far around value around 15 million, 1.5. The guarantees around 12, 1.2. Our initial hope was that we'd at least be able to do 250 guarantees of about $30 million in value and then press on. So I'm being very direct with our banks tonight. We need you to take this program and move it along a lot faster. So for all of you who don't know, it is simply through your bank, credit union, or development bank, you go for a loan based on certain qualifying criteria, you can get a guarantee of, say, 75 or 80%. If it's a $100,000 loan, $100,000 loan, the guarantee could be around $80,000. And we found this is very important because many of our small businesses struggle to bring either collateral, certainly don't have a track record, and many do not have the connections to get the loan. We cannot double the size of our economies, the big push, without small businesses. Small businesses are essential. Small businesses account and are the single largest source of employment in our currency union. That is also true in the United States, the largest economy in the world. So there's a deliberate strategic move by our central bank with the Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation. I want to recognize the chairman of the corporation, Mr. Michael Spencer, who's here, and the board members, some of whom are here. There's a deliberate move by us to support small businesses. We've made the move. Now it's your turn. Banks, credit unions, and others. Governments have supported us through this program. They have invested. Now we need to see the results of that investment. That's all I wanted to say on that. Obviously, I'm unashamedly making a plug for the program because of what it needs to do for our region, and this is why it is now one of the awards that we give at the Bank of the Year Awards. Let's see who gets it next. Last year it was Republic of Grenada, this year is Bank of St. Lucia. Let's see who gets it next year. I put on the challenge. Let me see what you have next year. We'll see God willing. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm between you and the break and refreshments, and therefore I'll say no more for now. But tomorrow morning we will convene the conference and I'll have a few more words to share at the opening plenary. But suffice it to say, I want to thank everyone for your full participation. I'm told this is one of our bigger turnouts of Sawata Ludu's lecture, and I know there are many online who are enjoying the lecture and enjoying the ceremony, the awards ceremony, and I want to thank all of you on behalf of all of us here at ECCB. It is a pleasure to serve you. It is a joy to serve you. We delight in serving you. and we want to do even better. So continue to give us feedback, because around here we say feedback is a gift. And every day we challenge ourselves, because we have to make a distinct choice. We either going to curse the darkness or light a candle. Every day you must choose to light a candle. That's what we try to do around here. You see those awards that were mentioned, the 6, 7, how many awards we've gotten in the last 5, 6 years? It's a deliberate, we don't set out ourselves to get awards, we're grateful. But we are very clear-minded about the need for us to strive for excellence, to drive innovation, and to light candles. That is what we must do together. And I'll close with something I've always said. It's a little anthem around here by now, and it's a regional quote of mine. As a region, we cannot change our history, nor can we change our geography. But together, we can and must elevate our development trajectory through innovation and collective action. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Governor, for those words of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for being a wonderful audience. We thank you for your time, your patience, your attention. We ask you now to please stand as we allow our Governor General and other dignitaries to depart, after which you're all invited to join us to some cocktails around the fountain, where you'll be treated to a live band. So hope you walk with your dancing shoes tonight and have some good food and some music. Governor and other dignitaries, please feel free to depart. Thank you once again. Have a good night all, and we look forward to seeing you around the fountain to some cocktails and music. Have a wonderful evening all. Thank you.
These are teenagers with access to TikTok and access to Instagram, and they have access to 24-hour Wi-Fi. They are no different than our kids. And yet you say that they are just not addicted.
They're not. It's not like you have all those earphones and you're just on your phone. We should walk around here during breaks. You'll find them seated around the compound just telling stories. And there's Wi-Fi and they have their phones. But they're more engrossed in the stories that they tell.
Your schools are proof that a strong sense of community and strong relationships make us less susceptible to addiction. It's such a treat to talk to you.
It's a treat for me to talk to you.
When I came to visit you, I was so inspired by your students, by your learners. And we have to tell everybody, which is in your schools, the students aren't students, they're learners. And the teachers aren't teachers, they're
education facilitators.
Facilitators, yes. Which I love. Just to start there, why the change in language? What's wrong with teacher and student?
Very good question to start with. We've worked in Kenya for over 25 years with the communities. And primarily, we worked with the primary schools, where they're government schools. And then what we do is we build the schools and we provide school meals. And we train the teachers in the primary schools. When we go into a community, we are not experts. The community members are experts in their communities. They know their challenges. We don't. We don't go there and we tell them, we feel like you guys need clean water. We feel like you guys need a classroom. Nope. The community members know their challenges. And so when they approached us with this idea, we said, okay, let's have a sit down. They said, in our schools, teachers are feared. You know, by that time we had corporal punishment. And so the word teacher was like a demigod. And they said, you know, and we said together, we want a school where it's a community. We don't fear each other. We facilitate. Facilitate comes from the Latin word facil, meaning make easy. So we make easy the learning process. And in this school, we are also learners. I am a learner. As much as I am a teacher, I'm a learner. And so we are all in the learning process.
The schools that they had were basically mud huts, right?
Yeah.
And susceptible to the elements.
Yeah.
Dirty, cramped, hot in the summer. And one of the first things you did is you came in and you built proper walls, proper floors, proper roofs, bigger rooms, nicer desks, so the kids have a nice place to come to school. And it's amazing what a difference it makes. And I love that you showed us, you left one of the old buildings there just as a reminder of how things are better, especially for the young kids, I guess, who don't even know what it's like to go to school in the old schoolhouse. But that's the primary school. And I came and visited your all-girls high school. I've never met such smart, driven girls. They get to set their own schedules, right? So the way it works is because they have to help out at home, you know, there's this subsistence farming a lot of these kids come from. And so they help out during the harvest and they help out at home, but then they leave to come to school for 3 months, right? Like a boarding school.
Yes.
And then they go back for how long?
For 3 weeks to a month.
So they go 3 weeks to a month and then come back to school for 3 months and then 3 weeks to a month. So they have this balance. And when they come to school, they set their own schedule, right?
Yes. Yes.
Now, can you please tell us what that schedule is?
Yes. So as the founding principal, when we started the school, that was one of the things I was really looking forward to. I was looking forward to a school where the learners value the school and are proud of their school. This is our school. We set our school schedule. We decide on what we want. And Simon, you know, when you set up something, you own it and you're proud of it. And that was the thought behind that. And so for their schedule, when we had them sit down, they actually drafted a schedule and were like, oh my goodness. We want to wake up at 3:30 a.m. We want to go to bed at 11 p.m. And so we had to negotiate. We told them, yes, we know education is all you have because you want to be change makers in your communities. You want to give your best. You want to be the pride of your communities, but you need some sleep. So we negotiated and they wake up at 4:30 a.m. and they go to bed at 10 p.m.
They wake up at 4:30 a.m. Let's be clear here. They wake up at 4:30 a.m. to start school.
Yes. And like Simon, something else, they're supposed to wake up at 4:30, but by 4, they'll always be up. So we always tell them, please go back to bed. You know, even in the evening at 10, they go to bed and they have spotlights and they still want to study because, you know, for them, this is all they have. They come from very humble backgrounds. They want to change their families. They want to change the trajectory of their families. So this is all they have and they want to give their best. So we have to really just switch off the lights and tell them, please sleep.
What is it that makes these kids so much more motivated than your average Western student? Is it that Western students have too much and they take it for granted? What is it about the culture of your school that these kids are so motivated? And they're not motivated for the first time. They're motivated for all 4 years of high school. What is your theory?
It's an intrinsic motivation. That's the most important thing here. It's not extrinsic. We don't push that motivation in them. They are motivated from within. When they come into school, you know, just a brief background. These are kids who, most of them are first generations to go to school in their families. Their mamas were in arranged marriages from 15, 16, 17 years with 12 children. That's all they know. And they can see this suffering. Most of them, their older siblings haven't even gone to school. And so they see their families and they want to lift their families out of poverty. And that is the word they use. I want to be the light of my family. You'll always hear that. I want to be a role model in my community. I want to be this. And so it's an intrinsic motivation that drives them.
I want to be the light of my family. So these kids come to school with a real sense of purpose and cause. It's not just because they have to go to school. It's that they want to go to school. They are literally driven by a sense of purpose and cause, unlike a lot of students, I think, in the West.
Yeah, I can share with you one story.
Please.
of one learner called Sharon, and you met Sharon. So a few years ago, there's a girl who walked into my office at around 12:30 p.m., looking very tired and hungry. And of course, I gave her food first and we sat down to talk. And then she told me, you know, miss, I started my journey at 5 a.m. I am a sibling in my family, in the middle. My older siblings haven't gone to school. I sat for my grade 8 exam and did well. It's been 2 weeks since the grade 9s reported. I haven't had a chance to go to school because my mom is not able to. She comes from a single parent family. My mom is not able to. My older siblings didn't get this chance. I want this chance. And she came in and she was 2 weeks late. The school was already full because Simon, we get hundreds of applications and we can only take a few. And so we sat down and I told her, I'm sorry, but unfortunately, the school is full. And you could see she broke down and she got emotional and she looked at me and she said, I have to get an opportunity. Whatever you do, you have to give me a chance. And you know, it was lunchtime and the girls were on the pavements going to the dining hall for lunch. And she pointed, she told me, you see these girls? You see how smart they are in their uniforms? That is what I want. I want to walk in these pavements. I want to be that smart. I want to change my family. I want to uplift my family out of poverty. And you have to give me this chance. And I said, oh, girl, I love you. I love you. The resilience in her, you know, and I just had to stretch a little further and give her this opportunity. And you should have seen her eyes when I told her that you're going to get this chance. She lit up and she said, I will not let you down. I want to assure you. I loved her confidence. And I told her, your parent also has to come in because we need to get this commitment from your parent too. So the parent came in the next day, and the next week now, which was the third week, because the other learners had reported, she came in and we gave her this brand new uniform and brand new shoes, and she was so excited. And in the course of 4 years at Kisaruni, Sharon was amazing. She excelled academically, in drama and music festivals. She was best actress in competitions. She excelled in games. In grade 11, she was the school president, and you could see that confidence in her. And she did her grade 12 exam, did very well, and earned a spot at Legacy College. And she told me, I want to be an entrepreneur. When I am home, my mom engages in small businesses, and I always help her. And I want to uplift that business. I want us to do business. And she joined Legacy College, the first class of business management and social entrepreneurship. She's graduating in a month. Last week, she presented her business proposal in the Lion's Den for a seed capital to start her own business. When they went for internship, the company that she went for internship in, they actually told her, you're amazing and we want to keep you. Can you study online and continue working with us? And she told them, no, I'm not done with my studies. I want to complete my studies, then I can look into that. She tells me she wants to be an employer once she clears, once she becomes an entrepreneur. So these are the kinds of learners that we have who deserve this opportunity. And this scholarship helps them to be able to not only change their lives, their families, but their communities.
What's your journey? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the western part of Kenya, so Lake Victoria, around Lake Victoria. I went to school in Moi University in Eldoret. Then immediately I graduated. I was very lucky. You know, I always say I finished my final exam on Thursday, and I told my dad the next morning when I came home, I said, I'm going out to look for a job. And I had just done my last paper. I don't even have my degree already. And I went out and I went to international schools. And it's very hard to get a job in the international schools. And so I went and I was interviewed. I told you, you're very lucky. There's actually an opportunity because I'm trained in English and literature facilitation. And I got that job immediately. And I was like, yes, thank God. So I got this job in this international school and it's in an urban area. You know, I'm in my early 20s, very active and just having fun. And then after a few years, I see an advert in the newspaper. There's a school that's starting in the Mara and it's looking for a principal. And I'm 20 something and we are actually with my staff member, we are seated together in the library with other staff members. And I joke and I tell them, guys, I'm applying for this principal job. And they all laugh and they're like, principals are in their 40s and 50s. You're only in your 20s. You won't get it, of course. And I said, watch me. And so I applied for this job. And I go for the interview in Nairobi. So there's a first interview in Nairobi, and Robin was actually in the panel. So they interview me and they tell me, this is just the first interview. The second interview is in the school, in the Mara, where it's very dry. You are used to life in
And the Mara,
urban
for people,
centers.
it's the countryside.
Yes.
It's the rural area. It's the rural area of Kenya.
So we have to interview you on the ground to see if this is a place you can work in. And then we come for the second interview. And interestingly, the ladies I was with, all of them were head teachers except me. I'm the one who didn't have not even a deputy head teacher. And then we come for this interview and I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is the place. And it was so dry by then because it hadn't rained. We only had one timber shop, a very tiny shop, you know, and then the school. So we are interviewed and I love nature. And so I see the hills and I'm like, whoa, I'm used to urban life, but this is a place I would really love because of the peaceful nature and the way it looks. And then once we're done with the interview, some girls walk in, some young girls, and we are told, guys, these are some of the learners that are going to join your first class. And I get a chance to chat with them. These girls cannot look you in the eyes. These girls cannot construct like simple sentences correctly, like the tenses. And I said, I feel this is the place where my services are needed more compared to where I am. And I said, if I get this opportunity, I'll embrace it. And when I was called that I had gotten that opportunity, of course, there were mixed reactions. I'm coming from this nice international school where I'm teaching diplomats' kids to this school where I feel I'm really going to create a difference in the lives of these young girls who are going to get this golden opportunity to get a full scholarship, to get an education. A young girl would have been married off. A young girl who, you know, without this opportunity would be a fourth wife, somewhere to an old man. I feel this is the place I need to be. And I resigned from my job and I came here. And Simon, I've never looked back. I've been called for 3 job offers with almost triple the salaries in Nairobi and every other place in urban areas. But the fulfillment I get from working with these young people here, just giving this opportunity. We've had over 600 graduates right now from Kisaruni. We actually have the 10th graduation celebration this year. And the alumni are all out here in the communities. They've come back to their community. We have one of them who works with Treasury, and she's the district auditor. She audits the district accounts. We have high school teachers. We have nurses at Baraka Hospital. And you know what, Simon, one thing that I love? That they come back to their communities. I love that. I love that they're able to come back and give back, pay it forward in their communities, become role models. There's a school, when we started Kisaruni, we had only one girl graduating grade 8 from that primary school. And service learning is a very important aspect of our learning at the school. And so every learner identifies a challenge in their community and they go and help sort out that challenge. And so this one girl said, the challenge in my community is girls get married at a very early age. So what I want is I want to go and explain to these young girls and their mothers on the importance of educating a girl. And the fathers too, but in a respectful way. You know, we respect our elders. So how do we do this? And she went on for service learning. And as we speak, in the class of 2022, we had more girls graduate from that school than the boys. So that is the power of these young girls going back to their communities and being role models. And the young girls say, I want to go to Kisaruni. I want to be like so-and-so. So that's the fulfillment I get. I go to bed in the evening and I'm just so grateful that I'm able to work with these amazing young people.
I want to tell you an experience I had while I was there, and I want you to comment. I met people, I met the students, I met some of the facilitators, the teachers. I went into the community and we met one of them. We went, what was her name?
Mama Jane.
Mama Jane, yes.
Yes.
Mama Jane, who was amazing. This wonderful leader of a community who was lifting her community and helping them in a way that she was remarkable. And I got a sense that we in the West, we visit Africa and the general question is we feel sorry for these people who have less than us. and we look at ourselves, how much we have and how much opportunity we have, and we feel bad, right? And there's something I recognized, which is, yes, they have a hard life. There's no question. They're a struggle. And Mama Jane has a hard life. But she was happy.
Yes.
And she smiled. And the kids who, they come from humble homes and they don't have a lot. And you see them playing with a stick and a tire.
Yeah.
And they're laughing the whole time. I read a study recently here in America that children who have fewer toys have better imaginations. And so we in the West, we think, oh, these poor children have no toys. And yet they're playing in their minds, they're playing in their imaginations, and they're happy. And I started to get the sense that we're so addicted to wealth, we're so addicted to money in the West, that we look at those without money and we feel guilt and we feel sorry for what they don't have. And it's like being a heroin addict, looking at people and feeling sorry for them that they don't feel our high. But we're the ones who are dying of diabetes and cancer and heart disease. Nobody in your community is dying of heart disease. And there's lower cases of cancer. And yes, there's struggle and yes, there's hardship.